Ebb and flow inspires persistence and determination during the rhythmical patterns of decline and regrowth in life. Each episode, I bring on an inspiring and influential voices who are here to help us stand strong and walk through the ebb moments of life and propel us to the peak of our health, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, so we can live our life in the flow, individually and collectively. This includes strategies, habits, routines, focus tricks, questions, and much more that we can use to live our life in the best way in order to maximize our service to others. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you're as excited for the Ebb and Flow podcast as I am, but to make sure you don't miss any episodes, subscribe now on any stream, check out YouTube, or visit solomonezra.com to learn more. My guest today is Coach Johnny Shelby. He has been a triathlon and multi-sport trainer since 2004, and in 2007 launched his business Third Coast Training, which has been recognized by the USA Triathlon as the nation's 8th USA Triathlon Certified Performance Center since 2013. Third Coast Training offers high-quality facilities and services to its members, including a human performance lab, recovery center, heated indoor endless pool, bike fitting, video analysis, and lactate, O2, and CO2 testing. Additionally, this performance center allows members to work with USA Triathlon certified coaches, as well as consultations for physical therapy, nutrition, and sports psychology. On today's episode, you'll hear all about Johnny's approach to training individuals, which I noticed really looks at the whole of the person rather than just their sport. Also, he shares a couple stories of previous clients and how his testing helped them pinpoint how to help the individual, not just in their sport, but as a person and in their own life, emotionally and successfully. If you're interested in checking out more about Johnny, go to his website, thirdcoasttraining.com, and check out their social media page at third_coast_training. If you haven't yet, please leave a review about the show and today's guest on Apple Podcasts, and head over to solomonezra.com or follow me on Instagram at king_solomon8 and Facebook Solomon Ezra Brezin to learn more. Also, subscribe to my YouTube channel, Solomon Brezin, to watch videos of my podcast guests and I, and you'll see new videos and podcasts that I released. Now on to the show with Coach Johnny Shelby. It's a pleasure to have you on the show and a pleasure to talk again. Thank you for taking the time to speak with me. You wouldn't believe it. I don't know if you can see my camera, but I have actually the Third Coast training shirt you gave me, many years ago.
Awesome, yeah. It's a compliment on your great fashion sense. And you look thinner too. You look like you dropped some weight.
I definitely would say I'm a lot leaner, a better BMI, and just strength overall. And yeah, thank you.
Good.
I wish I could say the same, but I'll have to see you in person when we.
Yes.
Are you still in the Third Coast office that I'm familiar with?
No, I'm at the other one. I'm over in the one that's over in River Oaks, over by the Galleria.
Oh, cool. I have not been to that one.
Yeah,
but
so we're on the 13th floor there. That's where the training center is. So that's where we got treadmills, the cycling ergs, and the swim ergs. So
wow.
So we've got a nice little setup over there to where you can literally do an indoor triathlon.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I remember definitely because I would go, often to Third Coast in Pasadena, and I would always see you with the different technologies or modalities, whether it was the breathing devices or I don't even know what a lot of them were called. And I remember even getting an awesome sports deep tissue massage from you. And so it's really awesome to be able to speak with you. But to start, I'd really love to hear about your background and how you really got into training performance and especially like endurance and triathletes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, oddly enough, the funny thing is here's where I'm at on the 13th floor. I look out the window, I can actually see the building that it all started off with back in 2003. A buddy of mine and I, we were training, and the funny thing is we were both injured at the same time. So we were in a hot tub over at the HBU Wellness Center licking our wounds, and we just looked at each other and just said, there's not a spot for endurance athletes to train.
Mm-hmm.
And you see a lot of gyms out there, and I mean, back in 2003, the idea of having a training studio or a training center, or a studio for that matter, focusing on a niche market was unheard of.
Mm-hmm.
And if there was one, there were far and few between. And back then, you would hear a lot of the, some of the well-known speakers within the industry saying that's the future of training, is get trainers, coaches, catering to the different niches out there, as opposed to like a gym catering to everybody in the market. So we were kind of ahead of our game. We already knew what we wanted to do.
Yeah.
And so with all that being said, we put our heads together and reached out to a couple of guys in the industry that specialized in, specifically in endurance athletes, and kind of, figure out, what would work, what wouldn't work. And the one thing we wanted to do is make sure that it was science-based, not, not something of that's a fad, which a lot of the concepts that you see out there, a lot of it's fad, a lot of it's bells and whistles, a lot of cheering, a lot of rah-rah, and very little to do with, sport specificity. A lot of it's just to help you feel like you're a part of something, or make you feel like you're getting some results by feeling the burn. If you feel it burning, it's working. And the reality is that when it comes to endurance training, it's not glamorous. It's none of the high intensity stuff. A lot of it's quite boring when you really look at it. But with all that being said, if you know where you're at, so this is where the testing comes in. If you can measure it, then you can start tracking, how the adaptations are coming along. So a lot of times individuals have no idea where they're at. They're just going by feel and their last race or their last performance, and basing everything they've been doing onto that last performance. And there's so many variables that can be in play that can give them a false assumption, and with no data to support it, other than I scored more points, or I lasted longer, or I finished faster. And the reality is that you could have ate better, you could have had a better night's sleep, you could have had a better recovery session that week. You could have, there's just so many variables in play. But the thing is, when you start looking at hard data with testing, then you can actually start tracking, adaptations, whether it's an improvement or if it's a step backwards. So we knew right out of the gate we had to do testing. So that was at the cornerstone of everything that we do, is, what kind of testing can we do to help individuals realize where their current fitness status was. And so that was the first thing that we were looking at, was, performance testing. And we quickly realized that within the market, there was really no places that were doing that. And
this is still back in 2003.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, you literally had to go to like a hospital, and or the university to do just for example, like a VO2 max test. You either had to go to a human performance lab at the university, or at a hospital. But the reality is that if you got tested at the university in the performance lab, first, it's not something you would just walk in and get tested. You would have to be invited by the professor, and more than likely, the first thing they're going to ask you is your VO2 over 60 or over 70? And if it wasn't, they're not even going to look at you, because they're looking for test subjects for research, and they're not going to waste their time on a non-elite, if you will. Yeah. But with that being said, even if you got tested, you're you're not going to have any meaningful data to take with you. They're not going to give you a consult on how to train.
Yeah.
They're just going to
give you the numbers.
They may give you the raw data, but even at that, by the time they give it to you, it might be a month later, 3 months, 6 months. In most cases, a lot of the individuals, they didn't get the raw data until like 6 months later, which by then it's useless.
Yeah.
But and then if you went to a hospital, the biggest complaint with most individuals is the person that was administering the test did not know anything about their sport and was not able to consult them on the application side as to how it was going to benefit them. But just remember, this was back, 17 years ago. So a lot's transpired since then. But that was one of the things that we knew, is that we wanted a spot where individuals can come in, get tested. And on that spot, after we reviewed the data and made sure everything was copacetic, that we can actually give them something to work with. This is your current fitness status, and this is what you need in your training. Because the reality is you get what you train. So if you wanted to be a marathon runner and your test results are showing that you're better at burning sugar or glycogen than you are burning fat, well, you need to do more low intensity training. What intensity would that be? That's what the test results would reveal. We would see their baseline lactate threshold. We would see where their onset of blood lactate accumulation was. We'd see where their anaerobic threshold was. We would see we see all the fatigue markers that are needed to help devise and develop their training plan. What do they need to do to improve? Yeah. So, because in most cases, individuals thought they were training slow enough. But the reality is they were training well above their base. And for your science guys out there, for your exercise science, your sports science guys out there, that's commonly, we would see on the gas exchange, that would be like a respiratory quotient of like 0.85 or their first ventilatory threshold. And, or if we're looking at their blood lactate values in terms of from a blood lactate sample, that might be depending on how they're looking at it, could be their lactate threshold, or their 2 millimole mark in terms of the amount of lactate they have in their system. So it just depends on how you do your zone methodology and how you define each one of those parameters or fatigue markers is how you would apply it to a training plan. So a lot of times you'll hear individuals out there talk about FTP, lactate threshold, which is interchangeable depending on who you're talking to. Some people use the reference lactate threshold interchangeably with the term anaerobic threshold, which that's confusing to a lot of people, because I use the term lactate threshold to define where's that lactate value where it's consistent, it's stable at the lower intensities. And if you increase it a little bit, it's still stable. You increase the intensity a little bit more, it's still stable. The lactate values don't change necessarily too much until, the load gets to a point where it starts to creep up. That's when that's the lactate threshold right there. Whereas a lot of individuals will refer to the lactate threshold as near the anaerobic threshold, where individuals are ventilating, they're breathing pretty heavy, and it's kind of it's a much higher intensity. Yeah. And so when you read articles out there, people get confused as to what lactate threshold is, and so it just depends on whoever's writing the article or however they're describing the training intensity. What is that definition? Yeah.
So thank you for that. Yeah. Thank you for that rundown. I kind of want to retrace a little bit just to make sure we're on the same page, and of course anyone listening. I'm not too familiar with triathlon training. But one, I loved hearing a little bit about the background, and like you shared, it's definitely ahead of the time because, in recent years, you start noticing that everything is becoming more personalized, especially when coronavirus hit. We're not able to go to the gyms, so people get personal trainers and all that that comes along with it. So you and your friend were both triathlon athletes beforehand, and you just kind of noticed how this was missing, or?
we knew it was missing.
Yeah.
And
but you guys,
so the thing
you guys had ran and competed for quite some time, I'm thinking.
Yeah, prior to that. Yeah, prior to that. So we did a lot of endurance related stuff. And so what we knew at that point with the testing, that had to be the marker that would actually bring people in.
Yeah.
You know, how do I know that I'm improving? Well, these are the test results. How do I know I'm going backwards? Well, this is where you're at.
So as opposed to just the feeling, like you talked about. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you can measure it, then you can actually track it. You can track gain. So it's a double-edged sword as a coach.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're going backwards, you're going to have to explain it. So back then, we didn't have the benefit of a lot of the tools that we have now. So back then, we were one of the first coaches in Houston training with power meters. And so with that, a lot of our athletes in their first year just exploded when they're able to get a power meter. Now, back then, a power meter for the bike ran anywhere between $3,000 to $5,000. So now you can get a power meter for around $600, and which is quite a big difference. So, and if you look at a lot of the age groups now, the older guys are a lot faster than they were 10 years ago. A lot faster. I mean, you'll see guys now in their 50s just blowing the doors off of guys half their age. And but with all that being said, it made for smarter training plans. So one of our taglines was, train smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
And because a lot of times you'll hear individuals out there say lines like, no pain, no gain. Well, our comeback to that was no brain, no gain. And
I like it. Yeah.
Yeah. So the thing is, with training, with technology, it's to a degree, you can have all the technology, but if you're not using it correctly, it'll work against you, because then what you're doing is you're analyzing every workout. And the reality is the body doesn't work that quick.
It seems
it takes time.
It seems like it's even more than you were saying, like rather than kind of basing your training solely on feeling, which can also have its benefits, if somebody, for lots of other reasons, just basing like, if you feel good, like being able to be in tune with one's body. But at the same time, it doesn't seem like what you and your friend were starting at in 2003 was really contradictory to that, because in a sense you were just opening the perspective to see other variables that maybe they weren't aware of, so they could take a more holistic approach. Like even back in 2003, I don't know the history too well, but we weren't so aware that burning fat might be a better source of fuel than carbohydrates. But can you dive a little bit more into all the different scientific testings you were at? I really am interested in the not only the process, the framework, and the training, and the different testing you guys were doing, especially how it opened up and kind of made a more holistic approach to training, because then you could help individuals in specific areas that they needed help with. But what like you mentioned the VO2 max testing, what other kind of tests were you guys doing, and what were they measuring?
Yeah, for a lot of individuals, there's just two different tests that we were doing predominantly. Mm-hmm. There was the VO2 max test. We wanted to see how big their engine was in terms of all a VO2 max test does is tells us genetically, in terms of where their VO2 number is how good their body is at extracting O2. So
extracting. So like using how good they are, not just at inhaling, but actually using that breath.
How good their body is at using oxygen.
Okay.
So in a simplistic way. So to put it in using an automobile as an example, it's like, being able to with through gas exchange, is this a 2-cylinder engine or is this a 12-cylinder engine?
Yeah.
And we don't have to do too much hard thinking to realize a 12-cylinder engine is going to deliver more horsepower, right? Each cylinder is able to utilize more oxygen for combustion, right?
Yeah.
So the thing is with gas exchange, we can indirectly take a look at, if an individual comes in off the street, and I've had this happen several times. I'm looking at the individual, and and this is when you're in the sport, or if you're in this industry long enough, you realize you can never judge a book by its cover. Mm-hmm. So someone can come in and literally look like a ratty old book. Once you do the testing, you're like, oh my God, this person just tested 65 on their for the their VO2 max, and it was a sub-maximal test. It wasn't a maximal test. So the testing that we did was not designed to get a VO2 max. The testing we did was more to drive to develop training zones. But if we got a high number, then we knew that this individual was, is a hidden gem. So I've had individuals come in and that, they tested at a VO2 at 65, which, that's fantastic. And the reality is that all they got to do is lean out a little bit, start doing the right training, and they would be able to express that their engine that they have. So the only problem is that a lot of times individuals, when they come in, they're thinking they have a high VO2 max, and they think they're more fit than they really are, and they've been doing the wrong workouts. And then what we got to do is basically slow them down to make them faster. Yeah. And with that, sometimes it's a hard pill for them to swallow, but the data points right to them. But the thing is, a lot of people don't understand physiology. They don't understand what slow twitch fibers are. They don't understand what medium fast twitch fibers are, and they don't understand, motor unit recruitment. They don't understand the whole idea and the process behind training zones. They don't understand that the secret sauce is you don't improve when you do the workout, you improve when you recover. Yeah. And so with zone-based training, so understanding where all these parameters are, you can set an intensity so the athlete understands this is where they need to be at to recover. This is the intensity where they need to be at to improve their base, to recruit those slow twitch fibers so they can get that enzymatic development to break down fat more efficiently and preserve their glycogen stores so they don't, run out of gas, so they can become more resistant to fatigue. But with all that being said, with the VO2 max, it's just basically we can look at an individual and see how big their engine is. It doesn't mean they can go out and win marathons and become a professional athlete. But on that note, did you follow the Tour de France in the last couple of years?
No, I haven't.
Yeah. So I would say back in 2004, we had an athlete come in, and his father said, "Hey, I just want to see how my son's doing." And we had another we had another kid come through, and it was odd that in the same year, both these kids came in, and they both took different paths in their career, but they were both like early teens, if not, they were like almost 10, 11 years old. Mm-hmm. But they were doing, one was actually in the sport already. And when he came in, he tested off the charts. I mean, his VO2 was through the roof, and his father says, "Well, what should I do?" I said, keep him. I said, don't make it formal in terms of doing every race or training too formally. I said, make it fun and interesting for him to where he wants to do it. Yeah. Now, to make a long story short, he was the last American that was in the Tour de France from Texas, Lawson Craddock. Wow. And now, I didn't train him. I just did the testing. And his father, asked all the right questions. What should I do? And, as far as grooming, I said, just keep him interested. Let him want it. Don't live through your son. And I watched him through his development. I remember when I was in Arkansas, when I was up there for a little bit, he was on a semi-pro team, and he was, he had his head on, and he did all the hard work. He was a great kid, and he finally made it to a top-tier pro cycling team. It was in the Tour de France. And that same year, way back when, I had another kid come through and test them. He became a pro cyclist too, but not a top-tier one. He chose to go to college where Lawson, he went all in. And a lot of people don't realize in the world of cycling, your career is very short. Once you get to 29, you're basically, it's like gymnastics. You're retired. You're too old for the sport. It's just brutal. The sport is just absolutely brutal. And a lot of people don't understand how brutal that sport is. When you do the Tour de France, that's like doing a marathon every day for 21 days.
Yeah,
I can't imagine. The thing is that to be in that sport or in any endurance sport at that level, your lactate threshold, that base has to be superior. It has to be way high. When it's way high, your fatigue rate is much lower. So you recover faster. You utilize fat much more superior than anybody off the street. And but the thing is that it doesn't mean that you can go out and hammer it every day. You're just better than everybody else. And a lot of people don't realize to be a cyclist where you could be in the Tour de France, it would be much easier to make it to the NFL. Be on an NFL team. A lot easier to make it to the NFL. And that's how tough the sport is. There's not that many pro cycling teams. And but with all that being said, so the VO2, we can with the VO2 max, we can identify a lot of the numbers, breathing reserve, how well the individual takes in air, the respiratory rate. Sometimes I can tell the individual's been smoking in the past, just simply because their volume is not there. It's kind of wimpy.
Yeah.
And but the other side of it is not that I'm doing any kind of diagnostic or anything like that. It's just that you just see they're lacking the performance. They got a lot of work to do.
Yeah. But
the other part of it too is on the we do the blood lactate. With the blood lactate, that's actually what's going on in the muscles. So with that's predominantly what I like to do, is doing that. The VO2 max is usually when an individual is leaned out. So if an individual is not leaned out, they got some work to do. And so with the VO2 max, it helps us see do they have a ceiling problem or they don't. And so outside of that, if they have a weight issue, a lot of times then we'll take a look at the VO2. So the thing is just it's more of application. It's like what does the individual need? Where are they at? Where's their head at? What it's not a one size fits all in terms of what test is going to be applicable to each individual. But with all that being said, for most individuals, doing a blood lactate is going to be a lot easier because most individuals don't like having a mask on their face. They feel like they're not getting enough air, which usually is not a problem for elite athletes. They have no problem getting air in. But with that being said, with that, it helps individuals, seeing those hard markers when you see lactate values. Yeah. You can compare those lactate values at different intensities. Whereas the VO2 side, you can kind of see what their, where's that VO2 max is. Once you realize they got a high VO2, then you can go back and say, hey, look, it's you don't have your problem's not with your ceiling. It's all the other things that are they're associated with your development. So the thing is, you got to look at testing from when you're at a coaching level. It's eliminating variables, and then translating to okay, if this is not a limiting factor for them to improve, then what is their limiting factor for them to compete at within their age group or overall? So if you want to be an elite athlete, your body composition better be commensurate to other elite athletes. If everyone else is 9 and 10% body fat, showing up with 20% body fat, it ain't gonna happen. You're not going to be in the same ballpark. That's going to cost you a lot more.
Do these different tests help for just an everyday athlete?
Absolutely.
And how could, like, if I were to get a VO2 max, by the way, if you said triathletes, till cyclists till the age of 29, I got 5 years to go. So we'll be in contact. But so, I mean, I really like this I've only just a basic knowledge of the VO2 max and the lactate test you were talking about. How can if someone like me were just to come in to get a test like that, and what would that how could that help just an everyday athlete?
Well, the first thing I'd be talking to an athlete first is what is their objective?
Yeah.
So the thing is that in most cases the VO2 max type test or VO2 test or gas exchange test may not actually be right out of the gate something I would
start with.
I would be looking at. I would probably start with like a blood lactate test, just simply from the fact that for a lot of individuals, the blood lactate test is it's less cumbersome. A lot of times individuals, when they get a mask on their face, it's something they're not used to. They're right out of the gate. They're also not used to doing a test. So it's another thing. You ever heard of a lab coat syndrome? White lab coat syndrome?
Mm-mm.
The moment they feel like they're going to get a shot, the moment they feel like they're going to get tested, their heart rate goes up. They get antsy, they get a little bit of anxiety.
It happened to me before.
Yeah. So doing a blood lactate where we don't put the mask on them, it's a good starting point. But the other part of it gives us plenty of data. The thing is, once their performance level is at a higher rate, then we bring in the mask. We do the gas exchange. But for my ultra distance guys, if they come in and let's say they're doing a keto type diet, then we'll do gas exchange, because the thing is that we can actually then see, without having to do the blood sampling from like say measuring blood ketones, we can definitely see how long if they've been fat adapted or in nutritional ketosis for some time, because we'll see it in their free fatty acids as far as their burn rate. We'll see, at the lower intensities, which for them they may be moving pretty fast. They're still burning anywhere between 1.5 grams to almost 2 grams per minute in fat, which that's really, really, really high. Most individuals, they would only be burning maybe, 0.5 gram per minute to maybe 0.75 grams per minute in fat when they're on a mixed diet, meaning they're eating fruits and vegetables and protein. But if they're on a keto type diet, usually then if we know that beforehand, we'll recommend the gas exchange over the lactate if money is an issue. Otherwise, we recommend both. But a lot of times people want to know what their VO2 max is. But if they're overweight, the number's not going to be all that great. So weight is used in the calculation of their VO2 max. So if you got room to lean out first. Get your adaptations, get your training zones with blood lactate. After you lean out, then let's see where your numbers are at. See, because then you can rule out if your VO2 max is a limiter. So I have had individuals come in where the parents are saying, "Hey, our kid wants us to buy him a $20,000 bike, and we don't know if it's a fad or whatever. He wants to go pro, and we do the testing, and his VO2 is at a 40." And we're like, we'll talk to him about maybe finding another sport.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah. And because the VO, when they're young and they're going hard and they're training hard and their VO2 is only at 40, the most you can improve your VO2 max is about 30%. And that's in a lifetime. So the thing is that improving that 40 up to a 60 or a 70, if they want to go pro, it's just not going to happen.
Wow.
But, for an individual like that, intermittent sport would be more to go. And oddly enough, the parents were happy. They came back. They're like, "Oh, he loves tennis. He's all over that now. He's awesome. Thank you.
You saved us $20,000.
Yeah, saved him $20,000.
Instead, we got a $100 racket or something.
Yeah. And,
wow.
But with that, again, testing for a lot of individuals that come in, for a lot of them, sometimes it's just ruling out variables. So I did have one time, parents that came in, they were both in the fitness industry. They had their daughter was passing out during the workouts, and which was not a good thing because they were a swimmer. and they got kicked off the team. And they were freaking out because all the way up to that point, their daughter was breaking, high school records, winning every race that they were in, and actually was being looked at by scouts. This is at the high school level. But now her potential of getting a scholarship was in jeopardy because she was no longer on the team because, she passed out twice during a swim workout. And to make a long story short, when she came in, we did the testing on the bike. We weren't going to put her in the pool. And she passed out during the assessment. And we were doing blood lactate and VO2 gas exchange at the same time. And we realized that she was massively carb depleted. And the test results revealed that. Now, mind you, up to that point, this girl saw a cardiologist, saw a dietitian, saw every specialist you can think of, and none of them could figure out, what was going on. Some of them we were surmising the fact that maybe she just didn't want to do it and was just kind of faking that, she just didn't want it anymore. But when one of the things I had the conversation with the parents was I wanted to talk to their daughter separately from them because I did want to find out, did she want it or not? Or was it the parents wanted it more than she did? And she goes, no, I really love swimming. I love it. And I said, well, who are your idols and stuff like that? And she was rattling off all these guys over at UT. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, by the way, take a look at this guy. And it was one of the swimmers from UT, which I had done some testing on. He came in, a good looking kid. And her jaw just dropped. And she's like, oh my God, you're so-and-so. Oh my God.
That's awesome.
And he sat down next to her and he was like, hey, what's going on? Blah, blah, blah. And she goes, oh, I passed out during the test and blah, blah, blah. And I asked, and I told him, I said, hey, do you mind sharing how your diet was, what you experienced? And he goes, yeah. He goes, when I showed up at the dorm, I didn't realize my diet had slowly changed. One of my roommates were into a low carb diet. And he goes, you know what we do. And we go, we need a lot of fuel. She goes, yeah. He goes, how much do you eat? She goes, well, my dietitian has me on an 8,000 calorie a day diet. He goes, hey, that's exactly what I do. And he goes, yeah. He goes, my roommate was on a low carb, all protein shakes. He goes, I didn't realize that I had slowly made this transition. And I was 3,000 calories short every day. Wow. And my performance dropped. And I almost got dropped from the team. And she goes, that's kind of what happened to me. She goes, I got dropped from the team. And he was like, oh. And she realized, oh my God, this is all nutrition related.
Yeah, holy crap.
To make a long story short, what happened with her is she inadvertently had cut out her lunch simply from the fact that while she was having lunch, and I had to drill this down. I said, walk me through your day. And she's like, oh, I eat my planned meals and everything, I said, okay, well, in my head, I was like, well, not everything's adding up. I said, well, walk me through your day. And it came around to lunch. I said, well, during your lunch, how many calories are in your lunch? He goes, well, the dietitian has me a 2,000 calorie lunch. And I said, okay, well, walk me through it. What's in it? And then, and guess what? The only thing she ate out of that lunch was one packet of saltine crackers. And you know what prompted that? The girlfriend she was sitting with said, oh my God, you eat like a pig.
Yeah, I bet. Something like that.
She didn't eat that lunch. And what happened is that 2,000 calorie deficit every day cost her significantly.
And not just in the sport, but emotionally, you can just tell. Wow.
Oh, yeah. So at that point, so when I finally figured that out, and then when she had that conversation with that good-looking kid from UT, he looked at her and he goes, sweetheart, you are an elite athlete. You need to eat like that. He goes, I love it when I go out and have lunch with a gal that knows how to eat. And boy, her eyes got really big. And right then, he goes, yeah, if any of those girls ever tell you that you eat like a pig, just tell them, say, look, you're an elite athlete. You have to eat like this. And the thing is, she trained 4 to 6 hours every day in the pool.
Wow. This is in high school.
And this is in high school. And, but with all that being said, she did a workout in the morning, workout in the afternoon, and the workout in the evening, but that's not unheard of. I mean, that's what, if you want to be a top tier swimmer and you want to get, you enjoy what you do, that is what you do. That's part of what you do.
Wow.
Soccer players do it. They do technique work in the morning. They do their running all up and down the field. They do their work with the team. They do their work individually with their technique coach or their personal training. It's no different. And but with all that being said, guess what happened? She went home, and I pulled the parents in as I found out what the deal was. And I said, don't get onto her. She knows what it is, and she's going to fix it. I said, in 30 days, we should see a difference. I said, all you got to do is have a conversation with the coach and let him know what was going on. And I said, don't come down on her. She's just a girl going through girl things. And she learned her lesson, and she knows where she's at. She knows how to handle it now. And sure enough, she made it back on the team, and she got a full scholarship.
Amazing.
Later that year, her parents called to let me know, and they could barely keep a conversation going because they were sniveling and crying.
Wow.
And just so happy for their girl.
Johnny,
and,
that's awesome.
But it was, so the testing there, guess what the testing was for? Eliminating a variable. Was she getting the fueling? What was her fueling that what she was using? And I remember to this day catching her when she literally fainted on the bike.
Wow.
When we were testing her.
Well, it's one of the things that I picked up the most from what you were talking about earlier, and then this the story of this girl that you're just sharing validated it even more, is that it's more so that it seems to be you're helping a lot more on the mental side. Like you said, no brain, no gain, but it's like these variables are also helping trace like a core kind of reason of what's hindering someone's performance. Because this girl, even though it showed up as, she was fainting during those tests, it really was the real source of the problem was this kind of emotional response to a girl, her fellow classmates saying, you look like a pig eating so and what this and that.
Well, it wasn't so much the emotional; it was the fueling. She was not fueling for performance, so she was chronically carb depleted.
Yeah.
So she did not have the fuel to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
So she was exhausted. She exhausted all of her glycogen stores.
Mm-hmm.
So she could not perform. So imagine if
she wasn't eating all she was eating was what you said, those little saltines, and that's just nothing.
For lunch, she had a massive deficit during her lunch period. So basically, guess what would happen? So in the morning, she would do her workouts, and she would tap through all the energy that she consumed from the night before, and then she would have her do her morning workout, and then her afternoon workout after only having the saltines. Guess when she passed out during her workouts? Guess when that happened? In the evening. And the thing is, when you're chronically carb depleted, you're behind the curve all the time. So the thing is, with endurance athletes or elite athletes, you are always training in a state of carb depletion, always. So the thing is that if you don't have time to recover, if you don't have recovery sessions, or if you don't have recovery weeks, you will come to a crumbling point. You will fall apart.
Yeah.
And so the thing is that in her situation, she was very fortunate that in terms of timeline, that she, it was caught where it was. Because the thing is, there's a lot of collegiate athletes that get into that situation where they just get run into the ground. And when they get done with college, they never want to do the sport again. And that's really common in track and field. A lot of really good distance runners never want to run again because they get burned out in college. And it's because it's intensity. intensity, and there's no recovery. So the thing is that a lot of these guys, they don't want to lose their scholarship. They want to retain their position, on the team, and they're always training. A lot of them are always injured. And, the mindset in college is, what have you done for me lately? And so the mindset as far as coaching in the United States is quite different than the coaching in, let's say, over in Europe. Over in Europe, coaches get their accolades on how many athletes they move to the next level. In the States, the coaches get their accolades for what have they done lately. Look at all these trophies we got this year. Yeah. Whereas over in Europe is, look at all these athletes that I took to the Olympics, or I developed them to where they did go to the Olympics, or they did go pro.
It sticks out that you're not only helping with their performance with the sport, but like you've shared with the different athletes that you've trained, like the very young one that grew up and was in the Tour de France. Like a lot of it is the mental side. Like you're helping really reframe their mindset when it comes to the training, and not just like you said with the train smarter, but like it's really kind of reinforcing. And a lot of the different teachings we would be told is that have to train really hard and then push yourself. And so I'm sure like a lot of people that came in and wanted to train, they just wanted to get after it. Like if you remember the times I would go in and train with Brittany, I just loved putting it out, but I had to be told by you guys to rest and relax.
Yeah.
But
the thing is
I really appreciate my being able to have learned how mistaken or limited the understanding was, or what I was being taught growing up. I now really appreciate that, and how you are teaching and training your athletes now with this more of smarter approach, and just more, it's kind of compassionate and going at it slow and enjoying the whole training, not just winning.
Yeah. And the thing is, a lot of it's educational. It's helping them understand how their body is responding to exercise. And the reality is each of us is different. We're all made the same, but we're different.
Yeah.
So the thing is that sometimes there will be individuals, they respond differently. Some can take more punishment than others, and but it's fun. At a different level. Like I had a guy who. He came in and he said, I really want to qualify for Kona, but he plateaued for 2 years. And so he figured he'd give me a try because he heard from other individuals that trained with me. And he goes, well, I just want to give you a try because this is my last year of trying to make it to Kona.
Wow.
And I tested him on the bike, and he was just a monster. I was like, wow, okay, the bike is not your problem. Let's see what you got going on the run. And while he was on the treadmill, I saw he had some funky things going on. So I had Brittany check him out and to take care of some biomechanical issues. He had a faulty pattern, but he was still fast. And but with that, when we did the testing on the run, I said, "Oh God, we're going to make you a lot faster." He goes, "Seeing right here, you've been training too fast on the run. We're going to have to slow you down and make you faster." I said, but at the same time, I said, we're also going to be able to improve you on the bike. But I said, you got a big engine on the bike. And so to make a long story short, his engine, within that year, we did get him to a point where he could qualify for Kona. And I remember when he went to the race, I told him, I said, look, this is the power that you should be able to push on the bike. And he said, he goes, I can wrap my head around that. I can do that. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, this is where you need to be at on the run. Now, mind you, on the training plan is built to where, we develop some tolerance but also help him wrap his head around that he can do that work. So the thing is that we built his engine to the point where the first time he qualified for Kona, he was able to wrap around his head around the fact that he could do it, mm-hmm. because those power numbers were a bit significantly higher, but not to the point where it was unimaginable for him to do it. So he went out there and threw down an awesome time. In fact, when he came across the finish line, he passed a couple of pros.
Wow.
Now, just to give you an idea, an Ironman, the pros start before the age groupers, which means he caught the guys in a wave that was ahead of him, which is, he had a big engine. And the funny thing is that when I greeted him, when he came across the finish line, then we went over to where, where a lot of the athletes will go to get a recovery massage. A lot of the pros were looking at him like, "Hey, great, you did a good job. How long you've been a pro?" And he goes, "I'm not." And their eyes are all got really big. They're like, "Well, I guess we could expect you in the future," meaning that they were expecting him to be in the pro wave in the future. And but he was excited. He qualified for Kona, and as a result of that, we needed to get him prepared for Kona. And so we got some more adaptations, and so he got even faster. And when we sat down to go over his numbers for, his power numbers for racing, he said, "Oh my God," he goes, "Johnny, I trust you, but I just can't imagine going that fast, for the bike and the run." And this is where your pros will talk about the suffering part. There's a part where the work is hard to do, but it's a long day. I mean, these guys are racing, basically at a hard effort for 8 to 9 hours. I mean, we're talking in a normal work day for a lot of individuals. These guys are getting up and they're racing the whole time.
Yeah.
And, so the thing is that the marathon, so to give you an idea, the marathon pace that he was going to do for the Ironman would have been a PR for his standalone marathon.
Wow.
And the thing is, when he went out there, he said, "Johnny," he goes, "the only thing that was going through my head during the race is, Johnny says I can do it. My motor says that I can do it. My mind needs to know that I can do it."
Wow.
And guess what happened? He went out there and knocked down a sub 930 Ironman. And it was on a very, very hot day. And it was beautiful watching. To me, watching someone perform at that level, it's like someone reading some really good poetry to you. It's poetry in motion. You're seeing all the pieces come together. It's just not it's not just the body. It's the mind. It's nutrition. It's everything crescendoing into this one moment in time that they've prepared for. The sleep they got the night before, their family, encouraging them, supporting them, their work environment, their coworkers that may or may not know that this is what they do in their spare time. Everything culminating to this one day to execute and to perform at that level is just, it's literally, when you look at it, you're just like, wow, this is fun. And when you see someone perform at that level, when they come across the finish line, they make it look easy. And, but there's so much, to it. And that's where, when you look at these guys, and that's when you realize as human beings, why we're at the top of the food chain.
Well, Johnny, it's been a pleasure, and I think that's a perfect way to conclude this podcast. I'd love to hear a little where people can get a hold of you, and if they want to get do the different tests that you offer. I know I'm definitely interested. I'd love to get a check out on the blood lactate and the VO2 max. Not necessarily for training just yet, perhaps, but just for my own kind of physical fitness. We'll see.
I'm just teasing.
I'll probably have to see. Huh?
A lot of times people want to hold those cards close to their vest. They don't want, a lot of times people don't want to share. Yeah, very simply, they can just go to Third Coast Training. You can spell it all out. They can just Google that, and they'll be able to find
I'll mention it in the intro.
Yeah. But maybe we can do a future podcast where we actually take you through your paces. I'll invite you to come in to do a lactate.
I'd love that.
And, you may not want to share your running results with everybody, though.
Hey, how do you know? What do you... like I mentioned, it's really cool how you're using the different science and the different testing, but ultimately it really is helping the individual with just their mindset. And with my experience at Third Coast, I shifted my whole approach, not just on the court but off of the court. So thanks again. Thanks for being a part of my life and training me athletically and in life.
My pleasure. Yeah, I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you very much for tuning in and listening. I hope this episode brought you some really great value. If you enjoyed any of these episodes or would like to hear more, please leave me a review on Apple or Anchor Podcast. I'm always looking out for topics to learn and talk about, gifts to share, and value to bring to us all. For more updates, please check out solomonezra.com. That's SOLOMONEZRA. That's where you can also sign up for newsletters, read about blogs, and hear my different podcasts. Take care.